Tom Green, how you doing?
Good. How are you? Hello.
I am excellent. It's great to have you on today.
Good to be on. Thanks for having me.
I am here with my co-host, Ton.
Hey there, how you doing?
Hello. How are you?
I am fantastic. Glad to have you on the line. If you're ready to go, we'll go ahead and get started.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you've, I guess we'll start it right out with, you got a new season of the show Tom Green Live. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, we're doing this awesome show on Access TV. We're having a lot of fun. It's a new talk show, and it's every Thursday night live, and it's hilarious. We have hilarious guests, and it's a ridiculous and funny show that everybody's got to tune in and watch.
Now, is this, for people who haven't seen it, is this kind of like a throwback to your early days when you had your other public access show? Or?
Not really, no. It's actually completely different than that show. It's really, it's more of a throwback to shows from the 60s and 70s, like Dick Cavett and Tom Snyder, where they would have one guest on for an hour and they would just have a really in-depth conversation and hilarious conversation. And I'm having a lot of comedians on the show, so legendary comedians, outrageous people with opinions and jokes, and we're just really having fun. The types of guests I've had on, I've had Andrew Dice Clay, Howie Mandel. We had Dan Rather recently, which was really interesting. Just had Sandra Bernhard, Cheech and Chong together doing an interview together, which is rare to see them together in an interview format. So it's been really cool, and people can call in and talk to the guests on Skype, so the viewer actually can participate in the show if they want to. They can just follow me on my Twitter at Tom Green Live, and they can actually get on the show with us.
Now, we assume that this show is maybe taking a bit more of a serious approach than your MTV show that you had?
Well, not really. It's definitely maybe a bit more traditional, but the kinds of guests we're having are usually pretty outrageous comedians. So I wouldn't say that it's serious by any stretch of the imagination, sure. But it is a conversation. It's not. I'm not doing pranks. It's not the sort of completely insane physical stunts that I used to do. It's definitely more of a conversation show. And people that like talk, the talk format, this show would appeal to them, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you had some pretty crazy stuff going on before. Can you talk to us a bit kind of about how you, I guess, got into comedy and public access, television, and how that led to the MTV and all that stuff?
Yeah, well, I'm from Canada there, eh? And I was up in Canada when I was a kid. I started doing stand-up when I was 15 years old and really got into comedy as a fan and loved doing comedy. And at a certain point, I basically started doing college radio, and then that led to a public access TV show, which I did for years, and then MTV picked up the show in 1999, and we were on there for a few years. So, but it was all sorts of different influences when I was growing up watching comedy, and then I just started doing it when I was pretty young.
Yeah, when it comes to your MTV show, did you have a lot of creative freedom on that show, or did MTV kind of try to keep you in line or control the content?
Well, because we started the show in Canada and we'd been shooting it for years, when we got picked up by MTV, they just basically were re-airing the comedy bits that we had already shot. So, by that stretch, we had, in that sense, we had complete creative freedom. We'd actually already shot the show pretty much. But then when we started making new clips for MTV, we were always trying to push the envelope and make it as bizarre and outrageous as we could. And sometimes we'd have the censors come down on us, yeah.
Yeah, I think my favorite part was probably when you did the man on the street style interviews. Was there any time when you kind of felt like you were in danger, or maybe somebody wasn't in on the joke and kind of wanted to do something to you?
Yeah, that happened all the time, because we'd be pushing people into sort of annoying situations, and people would sometimes take a swing at me or take a run at me or whatever. But I'm a really fast runner, so that was sort of my out. As soon as I realized someone was really going to get violent, I would just run. And someone's got to be really mad to chase you 16 blocks, right? So we usually would just get out of it that way.
And one thing we remember, we kind of grew up as teenagers throughout the 90s, and when you had the Lonely Swedish song come out, and it seemed like it was just huge there for a while. Were you surprised that that song became so popular and was on MTV all the time?
Well, at the time that we put that song on the show, the show was, like the hottest show on MTV at the time. So we were sort of knew that it was going to potentially, get votes on Total Request Live. We weren't quite sure what would happen, but it did go to number one in a day and knocked Britney Spears and J-Lo and all these other people off the countdown, and it really kind of threw MTV, I think, for a little bit of a loop because they weren't expecting to have to deal with that on Total Request Live. So, but it was awesome and such an exciting time. I'd been living in America for a couple of years at that point, or just for about a year at that point, and we were doing this show that was just sort of took off, and we had so much fun with that. So, but it's been cool. I've been fortunate to be able to just keep doing this stuff. MTV definitely gave me a huge solid by picking up that little public access show, because I've now been touring, doing stand-up, and doing my new TV show years later, and it's really, for a large part of it is based off of this great fan base that I've built up on MTV over the years, and we're having a great time.
And it seems like when you left MTV, they sort of took the stuff that you brought there and came up with their own shows in a sense, like the Jackass and those sorts of things. So what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Jackass is hilarious, and MTV is, always trying to, push things, and when I started my show, it was those early days of reality television. We were one of the first sort of guerrilla TV shows that took, handheld cameras out onto the streets and really went crazy, and it was just sort of natural after the success of my show for people to want to, try their version of it and replicate things that we'd done at the network, and that's cool. I've been having such a good time doing stand-up. I've been touring all over the world the last few years, and now I'm actually launching a residency at the Hard Rock in Las Vegas, which is going to be really cool starting next month, and it's going to be Friday, Saturday, Sunday nights. People can come down to Las Vegas and catch some comedy, and so I'll be doing my show live on Access TV on Thursday nights, and then on Fridays I'm going to be down in Vegas doing those shows. So I suggest people listening right now, watch the show on Access TV on Thursdays, and then Friday morning, get on a plane and come to Vegas and let's party together.
That's a beautiful idea.
Yeah.
So yeah, it seems like you really have a lot of different projects, a lot of things that you're excelling at. One thing we thought was interesting was your rap career. Could you kind of tell us a little bit about that? Is that something you might start to do again in the future?
Well, we're sort of kidding around with the idea of maybe bringing that back. When I was 20 years ago or so, I was a teenager when I started doing that, and we did a rap album in Canada. It was only released in Canada, but that was certainly my first foray into the Canadian show business world, and it was a lot of fun. But I may do that. I like making music, but right now I do put most of my concentration and effort into the TV show and into my stand-up.
Well, and you also had quite a few successful films there, with Freddy Got Fingered, Road Trip, Stealing Harvard. Is that maybe something you'll be working on soon too, a new film perhaps?
It's possible. I don't really put a lot of energy into sort of movies and film right now. I really am more interested in television.
Sure.
I just like the spontaneity of it. I certainly always, entertain the idea of doing them when people ask me to do a movie and things like that, but it's not something that I really am out there pursuing. Like movies like Road Trip and Stealing Harvard and Charlie's Angels and those movies that I did when I was on MTV, they literally just came as a result of me having the show on MTV, and people, were asking me to do these films. But television's my where I really like to concentrate, and I grew up as a huge fan of Johnny Carson and David Letterman and the talk format and stand-up comedy, and that's really what I prefer.
Well, and you mentioned kind of going more a throwback to those talk shows that had the longer, more in-depth conversations. Do you think there's a secret to being a good interviewer, or is there something to it other than just being out there?
Yeah, I mean, it's important that you are genuinely interested in what your guest is saying, and not just going through the motions, and really, obviously listening to them, but also, genuinely trying to lead the subject matter and the conversation in a direction that you are actually genuinely interested in, and not just asking sort of the most, salacious or outrageous questions, but
Sure.
really just kind of, I'd like to do a lot of research and really figure out who the people are that, before I interview them, really understand their life and understand, their opinions, and if they have a book out, or if they have books out that they've written, I like to read them all. I'm fortunate I'm only doing one interview a week, so I have a full week to prepare for my guest and read everything they've written and read every article about them and watch their films and watch their TV shows. And usually, during that process, I come up in my head some of the conversations I want to have with them, and I like to try to talk about things that people aren't talking about constantly in interviews, and a lot of times people can go on shows and essentially just sort of revisit their Wikipedia page essentially over and over again, and I think people that are getting interviewed a lot, which are people that are on my show, sort of realize this. So when they get caught, or when they get asked a question that they haven't been asked in years, or reminded about some funny story that they wrote about in a book 20 years ago that nobody's ever asked them about, that really kind of perks them up and gets them excited. So I just like to kind of catch the guests off guard with stuff that they weren't expecting to talk about.
Well, we are excited for the new season of your show, and as you mentioned, you got the stand-up and all sorts of other stuff. Is there anything else you wanted to mention before we let you go?
Everybody follow me on Twitter. At Tom Green Live is my Twitter, and we'll be tweeting all sorts of, updates about the TV show and my live performance dates, and love to have some people come down to Vegas and come hang out and have some fun with us this year. It's going to be a good time.
Excellent.
Beautiful. Thanks a lot, Tom, for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
All right, have a good one.
All right, cheers.
Bye.